Welcome back to the Takeout. Thanks for hanging out with us. Before President Trump was reelected in 2024, JD Vance was critical of interventionism generally, and in particular, interventionism in Iran. You can check it out. There's a podcast all about this. And now there's reporting here in D.C. that he is still skeptical of what's going on right now. I want to bring in our political panel. Republican strategist Bryan Lanza also served as communications director for President Trump's transition team. And Democratic strategist Elleithee, who was communications director for the DNC and had many other very important jobs in the Democratic Party. Bryan, let me talk to you about this because JD Vance talked about this today. He said it's important for the president to have lots of different opinions, but people on the Trump team shouldn't then go to the American media and tell them about them. So he's a little irked that this got out in this context.
Yeah, listen, politics is politics, right? It's a very competitive, sharp elbows at that level. I think people see that that Vice President Vance is likely a front runner to be the next nominee, and people want to take shots at him. I actually think it's good that a veteran who has served, overseas, who has served in the war, has pause about being a part of a new war, and I think he needs those voices.
Because the MAGA base isn't necessarily settled on this yet.
No, and it won't be for a long time. I mean, the MAGA base will ultimately be settled when Trump declares some type of victory, and it's some off ramp that they have. They can go to their friends and say, "See, Trump was right," and we'll see whether that happens in the next couple of weeks.
And as you know, Bryan, the president himself gave this oxygen earlier this week when he was asked about it, and he said, "Yeah, he wasn't so sold on it." I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah, no,
and so he sort of let the cat out of the bag, and Vance has to own it now because the president said it.
Yeah, but listen, I think the bigger drama would be in Secretary of State Rubio owning this. Like, that's the bigger problem, because as we're now 2 weeks into this, we don't see what the off ramp may look like.
Right.
And so Senator Rubio or Secretary of State Rubio, who happens to also be National Security Advisor Rubio, is ultimately responsible for the devising of this plan. So if there is criticism to go forward, if it doesn't succeed, it clearly lies on Senator Rubio, and Vice President Vance has some wiggle room.
And Bryan referenced two of Secretary Rubio's jobs. He may have a third.
Yeah,
Emir of Cuba or something.
Librarian of
He might be the next ruler of Cuba. I mean, Trump sort of talks about this, but interestingly today, the head of the Cuban government said they're open for dialogue. They want to talk because they're being economically pulverized right now.
Sure. But we've seen a pattern, right? We've seen a pattern now where the president was in talks with
and then
Venezuela.
Something goes on. Something goes boom.
And then something blew up. And then we were in talks with Iran.
That was Venezuela, then Iran.
Venezuela, and then Iran. And so, and the president has signaled that Cuba is next. He has said that Cuba is next, and that he wants to take over Cuba. So
how do you evaluate that as a matter of policy and as a matter of politics?
Yeah, I mean, the politics is super easy, right? This is a guy who said he was not going to enter us into unnecessary military engagements. He has launched more strikes against more countries in his first year of this term than any other president before him. I mean, that's where we're at. The guy who said that is been incredibly trigger happy. I shed no tears for the departure of Maduro, for the fall of the supreme leader. But in neither of those cases have we seen regime change, right? We still have the same bad guys in charge. What happens in Cuba is going to be a very, very open question.
Bryan,
but I would say we see a more friendly Venezuela as a result of Maduro being out there. So whether it's regime change or not, or we're dealing with
a more friendly dictator. About oil.
Absolutely, and it's in our hemisphere. We need these people in our hemisphere. So
less friendly on political prisoners, but more friendly on oil.
And we certainly haven't seen more friendliness coming from Iran yet, as they're blowing up ships who are going through, the Strait of Hormuz.
Marco Rubio has a lot to answer for.
I want to get your guys' assessment of the ongoing standoff over DHS funding and the material effect it's having at airports and the psychological effect it's having on Americans who see what happened at Old Dominion University in suburban Detroit yesterday and say, is Homeland Security on the ball?
Yeah,
because they're stressed.
They're doing the best they can. I mean, they're doing the best they can. The Democratic Party chose to have some type of partial government shutdown where DHS doesn't get funding. They actually not engage in the administration and try to sing an off-ramp. And so, it's going to have an impact. It's going to have an impact as more time passes, and we see some of it bubbling into space now.
But Gary Peters, senator from Michigan, Democrat, was on my program yesterday, Bryan. He said, look, we offered 3 amendments, fund Coast Guard, fund TSA, fund other parts of DHS, just not ICE. and the Republicans rejected all that.
Sure, and let them go to the American people that they want to defund ICE, in this coming up election. That is not a popular position to be in, and by the very fact that they don't want to defund it, it just highlights the fact that outside the mainstream.
You got a minute.
They're not saying defund ICE. They're saying reform ICE, and that is a position the American people overwhelmingly do support. The American people also will hear them say, we only tried to deal with ICE. The Republicans refused, as you just said, to fund everything else, right? As Gary Peters told you, to try to fund everything else. But also, let's remember what happened before this shutdown. The Trump administration gutted the FBI counterintelligence operation that was focused on Iran right before we went to war with Iran, because a lot of those agents had also been involved in the documents case. They shut down or cut back dramatically the cybersecurity infrastructure agency. Agency after agency focused on Homeland Security, they cut.
You've got the last word. I got to cut you off right there because we got to go to break. Bryan Lanza, Elleithee, so proud to have you here. Thanks so much.